All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for the February edition of the ICODR member meeting. It's so lovely to see all of your faces, and we have some new faces, so I'm really excited to get together. Boy, there's so much that's going on right now in ODR. It's super hard to keep track, and our timing could not be better for the ODR forum in Bangalore next month. So I think we're not going to do an ICODR meeting online, but I think we will do an ICODR meeting in person for everyone who will be in India. So I think we'll be recording sessions and sharing. If you can join in to the ODR conference, please do. All the information is at odr2023.org. And I will say Agami is doing a fantastic job. Gabby, good to see you. Wonderful. Agami is doing a fantastic job pulling together the agenda. I've seen a draft of it, and I think it's going to be released in the next few days. But I think it's going to be one of our best ODR forums ever. So if you can't be there in person, please do connect online. And we are delighted today to have Bob, who is a good friend of ICODR, a good friend of all of ours, to show off the amazing work he's done in the NextLevel Mediation platform, leveraging ChatGPT-3 and some of this advanced AI. I'm sure all of you have heard here in Silicon Valley, it's the buzz is audible just walking down the street. We sort of feel like this is the next boom. You know, everyone's wondered who's going to displace Google. Well, it turns out it's going to be AI, and Microsoft is going hard with their ChatGPT-4 integration into Bing. And you probably heard that Google is going to be soon releasing its competitor product called Bard. And then there's a lot of other AIs that are coming soon too. But the first ODR platform I've ever seen to integrate it is Bob's. And Bob, thank you so much for taking the time today to show us the great work that you've done. So I'm going to get out of the way. And Bob, maybe I can hand you the conch and you can walk us through.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, there are quite a few AI systems out there, and Colin just mentioned some. There's also Sparrow, which is from DeepMind, and a few other ones. Some of them are finely tuned to specific applications. OpenAI's is kind of a generic large language, what they call a large language model, generative AI system. So let me see if I can share my screen. Is my screen shared?
Looks good. We can see it.
Okay, so some of you have seen the system, some not. So what we're going to do is going to build a simple mediation. And so let's go in our system, which is this, the add buttons here. And we'll just make this kind of generic. And in the beginning, we'll just make this private, meaning that the system is not going to send any emails out to participants until we've told it to, basically. And we don't want people to get started on something that's not there. So what I've decided for this is we'll make a simple tenant-landlord kind of dispute, which should be understandable. Tenant is kind of withholding payments to the landlord because the property is not being maintained and there's mold growing in the bathroom, and the tenant feels it's unsafe and should be repaired. And so we'll call this, so we give it a name. So I can find it. It'll be an ICODR tenant-landlord dispute. And the category is real estate. Right now, we don't have a questionnaire because that's one of the things we're going to show is chat, how the OpenAI can help generate questionnaires. We'll just say today's the start date, and we'll make a time. Next. Now, the way the system works is you have what we call priority models, which are these pairwise comparison models that help you essentially find the priorities of the participants through this kind of cloud of emotion, because you can't be quantitative and you can't be quantitative and emotional at the same time. It's really two parts of your brain. So yes, you can be partially emotional, but when you have to do quantitative comparisons, it shifts to your kind of neocortex. Okay, so we don't have a model yet. We certainly don't have any risk models yet. And what we're going to do to just finish a simple framework for this thing, we're going to add some participants and whatever. Well, I just have some, I'm going to add blah, blah, blah. Stephen whomever. He'll be the tenant. And then we'll go and we'll add another party. In this case, will be the landlord. And I think I'll just make my son the landlord. He's always wanted to be one. And then we'll create, that's it. That's all you need to do to kind of create the framework for the mediation. Now, I mean, some of these, I have some things in the way of controls, but hold on. All right, so now, normally what you would do is you would add a questionnaire, you'd get some feedback, and then you'd be able to get a better understanding of what the context is of this dispute, where the parties are sitting, and then you would maybe start to build some models for the dispute. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to build a questionnaire for this thing. So we go to admin, we go to questionnaires, and this is for mediation. And then we're going to add a questionnaire. So we keep the category the same, which is, this is kind of a real estate dispute. So, and we'll just call it the ICODR. That's the same name. Okay, so normally what you can do at this point is you can individually add questions, as many as you want, for each of the parties to answer. But let's say we don't know what we want to, or how to generate the question. So here we click the AI assistant. And this is set up so that it creates the right kind of prompts for the AI system. And you give it a context, which would be questions about what. So this basically is saying, suggest questions for something. And you can either be a mediation, a negotiation, arbitration, or maybe a compromise of some type if this is not formal. So we'll just keep this as a mediation. And for the search term, we'll just paste in what we basically said was the dispute. And so now it's basically suggest questions for a tenant, withheld payments because the landlord had not maintained the property, it was unsafe, and all that stuff in. And it's basically for a mediation. So we'll click suggest. Now it goes off to the AI system with this context and examples, and it's coming back with what questions to ask. So in this case, it's saying, oh, what steps has the landlord taken to address them? Well, that sounds like a good question to ask. What's the tenant's plan for making missed payments? What kind of repairs are needed? What's the timeline for completion of the repairs? It's not a bad question. And what's the tenant's opinion on the best way to resolve the problem? Okay, well, those make sense. So let's paste those into our questionnaire. And maybe we want to ask some more questions. Let's clear this for a second. And let's maybe some questions about readiness or interest, dispute. Let's see if we get some questions about that. See if people are really ready. So we go off to OpenAI, and this is, okay, what are your expectations from the mediation process? Not a bad question. Do you feel comfortable discussing the dispute with the other party? Maybe. Are you willing to compromise? And what do you think the most important factors? Okay, so we'll add those. So now we save it. And basically here is your questionnaire that parties are going to answer. And so that's one example of how I'm saving this. So, but if you look at this, the point of this is that we don't allow the generative AI system to directly provide information to the clients for several reasons. But the main important thing is we don't really know what it's going to generate. And because of the way these are, way the learning system works, it's basically unsupervised learning. It's picking stuff from all over the internet. And we want to be able to filter this and have a human overseeing it before we let our parties see it. And so this is just a safer way of integrating the OpenAI into the mediation. So now, and by the way, if there's any questions, I think Colin can field those questions. But so this is one example of what we have to do. Now, the next part, so let's go back to the mediation stuff. And so we'll go to mediation, we'll go to dashboard. Okay, so we hear our dispute. So now we're going to edit it. Now we should be able to add our questionnaire and save it. So now we've got the questionnaire and we still haven't made this public yet. We're still kind of building it. At this point, though, normally what you would do once you've got a questionnaire, you would in fact make it public, collect information from both sides, and then decide on how to build the model. But to save time for questions, things like that, we're just going to go on and build the rest of this. And now the only part that we haven't built yet is the priority models. So next thing to do is go into priority models, and we're going to add a new one. Again, the category stays the same. It's real estate, and we'll call it coder tenants objectives, so we can find it. And we're gonna say, okay, I have some of these written down to save time, so copy this for now. Okay. And so the description for this one is basically to find objectives or possible objectives for the tenant who's withheld rent payments because things were unsafe. And the goal of this basically is to find optimum objectives. Tenant. And now the question is, what's the objective? So we'll go into our AI system, and now we can have them look for objectives or sub-objectives or criteria or sub-criteria. So maybe we'll just say criteria. Here's, oh, sorry, maybe we'll just say objectives actually. And then the context is for a tenant that's withheld the payments and there were leaks and mold was appearing. And we want to find the objectives for a tenant in a mediation. So we'll click on the AI system, see what it comes up with. Now, we haven't fine-tuned the system yet. We're just using what's already in OpenAI. There are ways of tuning it. And of course, one of the challenges with mediation is that it's confidential and there's not a lot of labeled data out there in order to actually tune the AI system, you need usually 200 to 300 examples of particular prompts and answers in order to make it somewhat effective. And so we haven't really gone down that path yet. But for whatever exists in the system today, we see we have a couple of objectives. So repairing the property should certainly be an objective, I would think, of the tenant. And then, so we click on the ad, and then basically we can select the scale that we're going to measure different options against. Now, the system has lots of scales, and in this case, we're just going to keep it simple and keep it an importance scale. So we add the objective, and now compensate the tenants, provide compensation tenant. Yeah, well, I'm sure the tenant wants something. The other thing is establish agreement. Well, I think that's part of the whole thing about mediation, but in this case, establish agreement between landlord and tenant regarding maintenance of the property in the future. That makes probably a pretty good objective, so we don't get back into this dispute again. And some form of compensation that may be a good objective. We don't know what that might be, but that might also be a fairly good objective for the dispute. So we'll just keep the scales the same. So we have a very simple model right now. We could ask it again to see if there's anything else that might be interesting. Again, once these are established, you can, of course, these look roughly about the same, so I'm not going to add any more. You can change the type of dispute again. It could be, maybe it would come up with something if this was for pure negotiation. We'll just take a quick look and see if there's anything else. Now, once you built the model, you can, of course, edit it, and this is roughly about the same. So I think we're done with this part for this. And so we have a model for the tenant objectives. It's very simple. These could be broken down if we want. And of course, you can change the order, you can edit the wording and everything else, but we'll save the model, and then we'll show you how this all works. So we've created a model for that. Now, we're going to go back and we're going to create a model for the landlord, because we want to know what the landlord's objectives are in this case. Again, it's real estate. And then again, we'll just go to landlord objective. We'll try to save some time. And then we'll, again, we can always add our own criteria anytime we want. But now we're going to try to find objectives for the landlord. And again, I'll just save some time. It's going to be roughly the same context. We're really not changing it. And this time, it's for a landlord when a tenant withheld rent payments instead of for the tenant. And so we'll say suggest some objectives. Okay, one objective might be, again, ensure tenant safety. That might be a reasonable objective if I was a reasonable landlord. Address future issues. Reach an agreement on rent payments. Well, yes. And this is probably pretty important to the landlord. We want to negotiate a payment plan so they pay back rent that's owed. And so that's probably going to be important to the landlord side. Again, we're kind of making these up, but once you've got back answers from your questionnaire, you'll know what makes sense for objectives for the landlord. And of course, you would have discussions and things like that, conferences to go over these and also to find more information directly. We're just trying to keep this as short as possible. Again, discuss a plan for how to deal with future issues. That makes sense. So let's just do that. And now we have a very simple model. I'll try this again, see if there's anything else that might make sense for the landlord side. These are the issues of withheld rent payments. Well, I think we've covered that already. So I think we're okay. So we'll just close our little AI thing and we'll save it. Okay. So now I have a model for the landlord. And we'll go back and we'll edit the mediation and we'll make it public. That means the emails will go out to people. Okay, so we have questionnaires on both sides. And now we're going to add a model. Hold on, let me get this out of the way. Tenant objectives, that's for party B, we'll save that, party A. And then for party B, we're going to basically add the landlord objectives. And save it. Was there a question or? Okay. So we go back and now we're going to turn this public. So emails go out and the parties can start answering the questions. So for the sake of brevity, I'm going to split my screen. I'm going to log on as party A. Here I am. I see, okay, I'm involved in a mediation. First, I have to.
We're only seeing one screen right now. We're
Oh,
seeing,
you were.
yeah, we're not seeing both. So I
Okay.
don't know, did you share one window or your whole screen in Zoom?
That's a good question. Let me go take a look. That would help. Sure. You know what? It might be even better if I just.
I think if you stop share and then you share again, but you share your whole desktop instead of a window, it'll solve the problem.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to find that.
Okay, got it.
See if
There we
could.
go. Now it's working.
Okay, there's one, and then let me. Okay, so in theory, you should be able to see both sides.
We can see both. One is dark mode and one is light mode.
Yeah. Okay. And so here I'm party A. Here's the whatever you put in your terms and agreement. Before any party can do anything, they have to agree to whatever you put out there. So now I've agreed, and I can see I have some questions to answer. And I also have this simple priority model to answer. Here's the mediation side. Let me just, so many things annoying. Okay, just give me a second where I can move the controls out of the way for, yeah. Zoom meeting. Okay, so here we'll go back to the, we can see both parties. Oh, I guess my son got a message because he just filled out his priorities. Well, that was quick. Okay, so I'll be party A. And I'm going to do, I'm the tenant. And I'm going to say, I want the property repaired. That's twice as important, or 3 times as important as establishing an agreement. I still want things because I have to live in the apartment to be repaired. And compensation might be more important, twice as important to me. Okay, so my priorities: repair the property, get compensation, and establish some kind of agreement for the future. Okay. Now, I'm going to close this for a second. I'm going to open this wider. And I can see on assessment results, here are the two parties. Okay, the landlord wants to ensure the safety of the tenant and reach an agreement on payments and then address future stuff. And in my case, being the tenant, I want the property repaired, then I'll worry about compensation and so forth. So that basically is the priorities of both sides. Now, normally we would go create some alternatives or options for what these things might be, but because of the time, and I do want to have more discussions about this, we'll start from here without creating these options and alternatives. You can also create an online negotiation once you've established some things. So we'll do it from here. So we'll click on that little AI guy again, once I move this other stuff out of the way. Okay, so I'll give it a context. Again, it's the same context, except we'll just say here, let me go back, maybe address this to be less specific right now. So this was the original one that we created. It's the same thing, basically. Okay. So tenant, here's the story. A tenant without rent payments because it was unsafe, and there were leaks in the bathroom. And okay. Now, we want to suggest some alternatives for settlements, possibly. It's a mediation. We could say, okay, let's just call it a negotiation at this point. And we fill in who the parties are. So party A is the tenant. This is so the AI system knows who is what in this system. And this is how we basically create the prompts for these things. And we'll say, give me some ideas, not solutions. We want ideas. Again, we want to keep this neutral as possible, not in the hands of either of the clients, but we want the mediator to be kind of the overseer of this stuff. Okay, so here's one idea. Well, here's three ideas. Idea one, landlord could agree to repair the property and address any safety issues as soon as possible. Tenant could agree to reduce rent until repairs are completed. Well, it's not a bad idea. That's one idea. And we could agree to waive payments because of this stuff, and or we could refund payments. So these are all three ideas that the AI system came up with. Again, it's up to the mediator to decide if these are optional things to negotiate or not. And the question then might be in the negotiation, how much payment or repayment, or how much to reduce the rent, or whatever that number might be. But this gives you an example of how you can use the AI system maybe to come up with some ideas of how you might resolve the dispute. At this point, we could say, okay, this is good. We're going to add this as party A, as one of his ideas. But this is creating what we call an alternative group, and we'll call it ICODR. And then, of course, this is one idea, and we'll just say it's an approved idea. Save it. Normally, didn't have a group name. Okay. Anyway, oh, I have to create the group first. Sorry about that. That's just create the existing group. Okay, so we save this as an alternative. And what alternatives are basically are options, right? And maybe we'll put a second option in. And then we'll select party, then we'll say it's for this ICODR group we created, and this is a wave option. And we'll just approve it for now. So at this point, we've had some ideas. We can ask it to suggest more ideas. We can change some of the options in the way we ask it to do it. But in any case, the whole idea here is to give you an idea of how to use the AI system in a safe way. This one is rent reduction. That's another option. And you can see there's multiple options that are available. You can choose them if you want, or save them for just action items that might have to happen, or things you might want to negotiate. So if you then want to negotiate some of these things, you would create a negotiation. This is kind of online negotiation. And we'll just give it a description, play all the time. That's representing party A, that's representing party B. It's not active yet. So once you create a negotiation agenda, and you can have multiple agendas, you can start adding items to the agenda. And if we don't remember what we had, we can just look at what the criteria were. We might want to add repair the property as a negotiation item, or compensate the tenant for a certain amount. If we had gone through ranking the alternatives or the options against the criteria, then we would see those alternatives here as well. And so you can create any number of negotiation items, and then you go through this kind of online negotiation. So I wanted to keep this open as much as possible, Colin, for since I see 24 things in the chat box.
Absolutely. The chat is going crazy, Bob. So whenever you're done with your demo, we can dive into some of those questions.
I demoed enough. There's a whole online training system for this stuff, if people really want to learn how to do all of it. But I wanted to keep this at least open enough for a conversation, since I think that's the most important part.
Absolutely. Well, let me just say, Bob, I'm going to just say from my perspective, this is amazing. And I think when you first showed me just some of these elements, not all these elements, there's a lot of new stuff here today. I felt the way I felt the first time I saw Wi-Fi, or the first time I saw an LCD projector. I was like, this is going to change everything. And watching you do this, this is the first ODR system I've seen that integrates in AI content in this way. And I think you've done it in a very, very elegant way. But it does seem to me like this is a game changer. So I am eager to open it up. I can surface some of the questions that people have been raising in the chat. Why don't I do that? But please, everyone else, don't hesitate to weigh in. You can put up a hand and I'll call on you. One of the things that Ken said is, could you ask the AI assistant what courts have ruled in similar cases with these facts? And that might be very useful in the discussion with the parties. Have you tried that, Bob?
No, I haven't tried that you try stuff out in the playground, basically. I've tried out things like, give me examples of case law, and it does come up with some things, but it's not trained down to specific jurisdictions, as far as I know. Now, you could do that training based on your own jurisdiction that you're typically in. But again, like I said, to be effectively training it, you need a couple of hundred of examples and prompts and answers to do that.
So does anybody have other questions that they want to surface now? I can work backwards. Bob, I think what you had shown me before was the use of the intelligent assistant to generate questionnaires and to generate sort of components. but this is the first time I'd ever seen ideas surfaced where you say, what are some, possible ideas for solutions that would work. But how did you architect that? What questions did you ask it?
Yeah, that got a little complicated. Basically, you you have to tune. There's a couple of parameters you can tune in OpenAI's thing. One is called the temperature, which basically controls the randomness of the completions coming back. And the other one is called the p-stop, which basically says what percent of those things do you want to look at? And so the combination of those things can generate, if you make the temperature 0, it becomes very deterministic and always will provide the one answer, which is the highest probability answer from all the stuff it has, right? As you increase the temperature toward 1, it becomes a little more random. And so some combination of those things will generate more creative ideas than just what the standard answer is. And so it was playing around with that for a little while to understand how to use it.
That's great.
That generate the ideas.
Yeah, I actually I have ChatGPT open on the back end, and I was just asking it some legal questions along the lines of Ken's, and it says, I don't have access to this information, but there's no reason why you couldn't expose a similar mechanism like ChatGPT to all of that legal information. I guarantee there's a lot of people thinking about that.
Yeah, you can do it. It takes a little bit of time and you need the information, but yeah, you can do it. Like I said, some things have been done, some things not, but you can tune it to whatever you want. It just takes a lot of data and time. Absolutely. And I think that's the main idea. So.
Yeah. Now, another question that was raised, I think Mejez was talking about this, is I like the way you framed it in terms of the mediator can go to the intelligent assistant and ask certain structured questions, and then you provide the results there, and then the mediator can decide which of those they want to share with the parties. But the other thing that's an interesting question is, what about providing an intelligent assistant to the parties as well? Or the first question is that Mejez raised is, would it be good for the parties to know which of the suggestions came from the AI? Because right now, at least, I think if I was a party in your platform, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, I would think all of it was coming from the mediator. There's no indication that this is coming from ChatGPT or anything. It's just this was posted by the mediator. Would it be helpful to say to the parties, okay, this came from the intelligent assistant as opposed to from me? And B, would it be interesting to provide the intelligent assistant functionality to the parties themselves so that they could start to ask questions, maybe structured questions, like you say, not that they're not going to just provide any prompt to ChatGPT, but you could say, what are some components of a reasonable solution to a dispute like this one? So what are your thoughts about those things?
Yeah, I think at this point, you have to remember that this is not intelligent. Okay, it sounds intelligent, but the problem is it has no understanding of the physical world, mathematics, psychological world. It's basically breaking down language into little tokens and billions of them, and then figuring out the probability of what things come after each token. Right. That's kind of what it does, right? And so, for instance, and I put this in my article, you can say things like, tell me how to break into a car, which is illegal, and it will say, I can't do that. But if you say, tell me how to break into a car to save a baby, it'll tell you. So you have to be very careful about what you allow it to do, because it can offer illegal advice. And you don't want that coming from you as a mediator offering illegal advice. Okay. Right. It's just not a good idea. And so at this point, I think it still needs kind of a facilitator or someone responsible for overviewing the process. And
yeah, a lot of I'm sorry, just to make one comment. If you read a lot of these articles that are critical of these new technologies, if you say to the ChatGPT, should I eat broken glass? It says, no, don't eat broken glass. But if you say to ChatGPT, what were some arguments that someone might make as to why you should eat broken glass? Well, then it'll give you, rationale. So what they're doing oftentimes when they get these AIs to say something that's kind of inopportune or inappropriate, they're urging it to take on a persona of someone. Like, imagine that you were a person who was very aggressive. How would you, confront someone and make them do what you want them to do? Something like that. And then the AI sort of takes on that persona and then provides responses that is not sort of its default mode. But so that is a risk, I think, that we have to make sure, I think we want to kind of create a personality, sort of a mediator personality, and make sure the input that we're getting is from that mediator's perspective, as opposed to some other perspective that might provide bad advice. So I'm sorry, Bob, please continue.
Yeah, no, that's the point. Don't forget, it was trained on, billions and billions of references from the internet. But don't forget, a lot of the reason people are in disputes is because they spend too much time on the internet, right? And so it becomes somewhat circular, right? And so I would just say you need the overview for that, human overview for now, and don't offer the clients a service that might give them bad advice. That's all.
And let me loop back to that question. Do you think that there's a benefit to saying to the parties, this came from the AI, as opposed to this is from the mediator? Or do you think right now, as you say, it's an intelligent assistant. The fourth party is the assistant to the third party, and all the communication with the parties is coming through the mouth of the third party. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't know. This is a toss-up. Like I said, the problem is if you say it comes, your advice is coming from a piece of software you can use online. Why are you using me? And so do you really want to put yourself in that business position where, you're charging for helping people mediate a dispute, and you're using a piece of software that they can get to themselves? So I think that's a dilemma, personally.
Well, I see Dan, who has written a book on the fourth party. I think you want to weigh in here, Dan. You probably have thoughts about this already.
Well, yeah, I want to ask what I think may be a heretical question. And that is, why is it inherently better to ask the AI assistant what the objectives of the parties are, rather than asking the parties themselves?
Right. So it's not really a substitute. Remember, the AI is implemented as an assistant and in a way of augmenting the capabilities of the mediator. It's not a replacement. So you can go do that. You can go create a questionnaire, find that information out. You can have an online discussion using the built-in, chat video conferencing in the system. You can do all of that. It doesn't exclude that. But for instance, if you want some new ideas that you might not have thought of, or maybe some questions, you can use the AI assistant to kind of augment those things. But it's not meant to be a replacement. And yes,
I understand that, and the difference between in the loop, on the loop, and out of the loop, because
right.
it's very important in how you use it. What struck me as you were talking, and I don't mean to be contrarian here, but it depends upon the mode and the model that you use for mediation as to whether or not, as to how important it would be to have the AI assistant. In the work that I do, generally, I try very, very hard not to tell the parties what might be a good idea. Sometimes I have to do that. Sometimes I work with parties who want me to do that. But my general mode is not to do that. And so, again, for some mediators, I think, first of all, part of what you're doing with the AI is wonderful. I mean, it's the setting up the front end is terrific. I love that. But I would be very careful about using it to generate options and ideas, essentially pushing you into a mediation mode that some people don't feel comfortable with.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I think that, sometimes you're at an impasse and you want some ideas you just hadn't thought of. So maybe it'll come up with some stuff. And again, this is untrained. And so, as the training continues, it might be more relevant ideas, maybe not. Again, this is left up to the mediator. I don't want to change the process a mediator is using. I just want to provide the augmentation and assistance. That's all.
Yeah, well, just terrific work. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, my pleasure.
Please.
Thank you. This is absolutely amazing. As Colin said, this is the first time I see that assisted side of the platform with suggesting ideas and so on. Did I get you right, Robert? Is the system already up and running?
Yes.
It is. And do you have any feedback or statistics about how it has been used, how beneficial it is for the users? It's always helpful to have a feedback.
Well, we just added the AI assistant, so I would say there's no statistics. And, if you're trying to do some kind of hypothesis with statistics, then you'll need, at least 200 or 300 to get within a error statistic mean. So the general feedback from using the tool before the AI assistant it's been very helpful. The AI assistant is only in the last couple of weeks, so we have no real data at all.
Okay, so no number of how many times the system has been used, and the type of users also, whether they're consumers, professionals, or otherwise.
That's correct.
Still too early, but it's definitely coming.
Okay.
I think Mehaz, your point is well taken. We need to evaluate how people use the tool and if it delivers the benefits. But this is just, Bob's the first one to ever deploy a system like this. So
yeah, absolutely. Great.
Bob,
Thank you very much.
there is a question from Christoph. It says, can AI suggestions also be graded as part of a post-session evaluation so that the AI learns or the mediator can refer back to useful suggestions in similar cases in the future?
You could do that. I haven't built software to do that, but again, what you would do is you would take the ones that we say checked off, for instance, that were useful, and collect that data and then feed it back in as a good example of what to suggest. So it's definitely possible. I haven't written any software to go do that yet, but
I think ChatGPT-3 is based on a snapshot of the internet from 2021. So it doesn't have the most updated information. I think the thing that Microsoft is advertising for ChatGPT-4 with their Bing integration is that's up to date. So you can ask it questions about things that happened yesterday and it can respond. I know when you interact with ChatGPT-3, it does remember your conversations and it can learn if you correct it about something. It'll say, oh, my mistake, but I'm not sure if it remembers that session to session. And I'm not sure if it's integrating. So presumably you could, along the lines of Christoph's suggestion, if the parties engage and they make a suggestion and they both really like it, and then they choose that as their solution, you could have an AI that integrates that information into its data set. And next time it encounters a similar case, it could say, well, here's a solution that other parties did like. So that's an interesting possibility.
Yeah, that's not hard to do. The question, before I go too far with this, I have to understand what the confidentiality issues are. And so
that's a good point.
You really have to be careful. I already had two meetings with Microsoft. So
wow.
We'll probably integrate into their OpenAI version. But again, they have some issues also. So just trying to get those things resolved. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go to Randy next, and then we'll go to Meyer.
Yeah, interesting concept that I've thought of for text-based mediation could be on the party side. If they text a response, using AI to detect kind of the positive or negative emotion or language they're using, and then automatically give them a notification, hey, this could be perceived as offensive, or even to the point once it gets better trained to just automatically kind of reframe the text entry into a more positive or constructive way.
Yeah. You can do that. You can do sentiment analysis based on, because there's a built-in messaging system. And so we could add that in. I was also going to add it into summarizing the results of the negotiation. There's a bunch of other places we can add this in. Again, the issue is confidentiality. How far does it go out? And, is it, you want to make sure there's no leakage in this. And so, because it's using such a wide body and continuing this kind of unsupervised learning, we need to judge that stuff first before we keep expanding the use of the thing. And I think just that's my main, issue right now. So
Yeah, I think if you capture information about specifics in the dispute and then submit it to ChatGPT,
that's a problem.
that's a problem, because that's not within the circle of trust. We don't control that information that gets submitted out there. But maybe all the more reason why we need to create our own AIs in the field that we can put within the circle of trust, and then we know where that information goes, and we can ensure that the algorithm is operating within our ethical guidelines for confidentiality.
Yeah, and that's my current discussions with Microsoft also.
That's cool.
Just
That's great.
where does the stuff go?
Yeah.
So
Now, Meyer, you said you used ChatGPT-3 in a recent mediation you did, right?
Yeah, yesterday I had a 6-hour trust assessment for parties were challenging the trustees' fees and many other aspects. And what happened is an issue came up about California's Prudent Investor Act. So I went right to ChatGPT, pulled it up, and I was able to discuss the issues because I had the precise probate code section to talk to the attorney, which obviously elevates my position as an authority because I'm on top of knowing the law. But what is interesting is we came up with an interesting solution to this problem of the trust, the trust obligation for investment of funds. And I was going to put into to the ChatGPT information about the outcome of this negotiations to see if ChatGPT will learn from it, and whether if we ask a question in another case, whether it pops up using this information. But how serious is the confidentiality issue? If I put in, how much information can I put in? I mean, can I put in the details of the numbers, or can I put a general, a general application of how the case was resolved? I'm just curious how we're going to deal with it. And my main thought is this is an excellent tool. It's in its infancy. It's a baby. We're all learning from it. And that's why I think, Robert, you've done an amazing job. I want to learn more about it. And thank you for putting this all together. It's a fabulous program.
all right, thanks. Yeah, one thing you should know about ChatGPT is it doesn't learn from the playground. And it's only has information up to, as Colin said, 2021. There's ways of tuning it and making it learn, but you have to use their command lines. There's a bunch of things to learn. And so what I was trying to do is remove all the complexity to put it in the context of mediation so that we don't, because unless you really want to dive deep into this stuff, it takes a bit time to understand it, and my background's in this is in technology. So for me, reading this stuff is not so bad, but I think for the average person, that kind of deep dive is a bit too much.
Too much, yeah.
Yeah.
Colin, what did you want to say?
Just a couple of things. I mean, there's a wow factor to this. There's no doubt about it. That kind of brings you back to using mainframe computers and looking at, oh, this is terrific. But a couple of things that I'm just kind of curious about. And the first one, using the analogy, uses how close is this baby to growing up? And the second part of that really, is this going to add value to our services mediators or diminish it? I mean, I know those are huge questions, but I'm just kind of interested in kind of quick overview of those, if you could.
Well, I don't quite see how it would diminish the capabilities of the mediator, because I think this intelligent systems are not going to replace humans. Okay, it's always the fear that something will replace. I think in some cases the replacement happens because it's a repetitive action that people are doing, or filling out a form over and over again, or doing something like that. That's my experience with mediation so far is that's not the case. Everyone is different, and that you need a different perspective on it. And so I don't see how this form of automation is going to diminish a mediator's capabilities, only maybe give it some new abilities to address certain kinds of issues. What was the first question? I kind of lost it, Colin.
How close are we to the baby growing up and being used?
It's a bit obscure, but yeah. Yeah, right now it's working. You can use it. You can get on the system and try it out. And try to use it in a mediation. I think this is the best way to know if it's grown up. Okay, as if it actually is useful in whatever the context you're using it in, right? As far as the software is concerned, it's very stable and it works just fine. We haven't had any issues with the software yet. So I would just suggest trying it out, registering on the system. I do have kind of an online learning class built into it, and I did add the AI stuff into that class so that
Great.
you can learn how to use that as well.
Yeah, and I'll say I've seen the course. It's great, really interesting. So if you like the Next Level Mediation platform, want to learn more, I highly recommend Bob's class. Merez just asked in the chat, who's paying for this?
Okay, so the way the software works now is it's software as a service. So you pay a monthly fee for using the software, and then you can have any number of mediations you want. The clients don't pay. I mean, you can make the clients pay whatever you want, but the clients don't pay to use the software. They just register on the system, and then they're part of a mediation. And then when you're through, you can delete the mediation, and all the rest of the information goes away, basically. And so the mediator pays for use of the software, the clients don't pay. And the monthly payment includes, like I said, any number of mediations. It includes using the AI system and any number of tokens you generate. Also includes using the messaging and video conferencing that's built in. So it covers pretty much everything, just one fee. That's all.
That's great. And I think there's going to be a lot of competition. We're going to see a lot of new APIs, a lot of new AIs. There's going to be a lot of innovation. So the question Colin asks is a great one. How long is it going to take for this baby to grow up? I think there's going to be a lot of growing, but I think we still have a long way to go. I think, at least this is my opinion, everybody has a different opinion about this. AI is going to be operating under human supervision for at least the next couple of years. We're not going to be turning AIs directly on and having them resolve cases, but every single case it gets, every single cycle, the AIs are going to be learning more and getting better and better. And eventually for low value cases, we may say, all right, let's let the AI handle these, and then maybe just provide a human layer of review if that's what the parties want. So Claire, what did you want to say?
Can we address Merez's question? I'm assuming that ChatGPT can be accessed in any country, but are there restrictions that you know of?
Yeah, I think it's not available in some countries.
That's
I have
right.
to go
I
look
just
again.
logged in and I think it said US only, but Bob,
Interesting.
theoretically, if somebody's logging into your platform, you could use it and they could be logging into
Yes.
your platform from
Oh, that's
Europe.
great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we're not looking at countries. Yeah. Yeah.
got it. Thank you.
All right. Well, I would love to go another hour, but I want to respect Bob's time. Can we please do a round of applause for Bob? This is a huge achievement, a huge leap
Yeah.
forward, Bob. And we want to thank you so much for your innovation and sharing this all with us. It's very, very exciting. So I think many of us are going to remember this date as the beginning of an exciting new chapter in ODR. So
Thanks. And well, I like to say, don't worry about artificial intelligence, worry more about natural stupidity. And so
we're going to be in real trouble when they have artificial stupidity. So yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bob. This was great. I will post this recording later today and we can circulate it. And thank you everyone for showing up. And please keep up the good work. And hopefully we'll
Sure.
see some of you in India in a few weeks.
Okay. Thanks.
All right.
Ciao.
Bye, everyone. Have a
Bye-bye.
good weekend.
Bye-bye.